So, everybody, thank you for joining us for the inaugural Detroit Community Group, or affectionately now known as the DGC. This is meeting number one, September 29th, 2022, 7:37 p.m. on Eastern Time. Everybody, thanks again for joining us. Without further ado, Professor Blau, UE5 Study Hall, Blueprint Alchemy, Episode 1. And this is the first of a educational series that we're going to take you through from the very basics of visual scripting to writing your own mechanics if you continue with us through the season. Welcome everybody again. Without further ado, Ben Blau.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of what I've been calling Unreal Engine 5 Study Hall. This may be the first official episode. If we haven't met before, again, my name is Ben Blau, and I'm a university professor and very fortunate to have the opportunity to teach classes in Unreal Engine at the college level. So if we have met before, it's really, really nice to see you again. And if this is your first time, I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you. This is your community too. I would also like to thank our community leader, the amazing developer Tali Marcus and IR4 Simularant, as well as Epic Games for facilitating this event. So today, we're going to be taking our first steps into learning something very important in Unreal Engine, which is called Blueprint. So in Blueprint, or I should say in Unreal, Blueprint refers to a type of programming language. I hope that that doesn't sound intimidating, and you needn't have done anything with computer programming to prepare yourself for what you're going to go through this evening. Blueprint is very accessible, and to be more specific, it's an example of what we would call a visual scripting language. That sometimes can just be abbreviated VSL. So if I say VSL, I mean visual scripting language. And the Blueprint visual scripting system is something developers can use to make things happen inside of Unreal. So by the end of this hour, we're going to use it to show you how to program some simple game mechanics that you'll be able to expand upon yourselves. So I'm ready if you are, and I'm eager to get started. So let me just switch to a different screen share here and make sure that we're all looking at the same thing. This is actually a little bit of a gag. Let me see if I can share. Okay, share screen. Trying, share. Okay, and I'm going to dismiss that notification. You all see me flying around a spaceship? Tali, is this screen sharing? Okay, I better stop the share.
It's very choppy, but I can see it.
Yeah, I can see there's a little lag.
Yeah, I think it's going to be laggy on this platform, unfortunately. It's silky smooth on my end. I have to apologize for that. But this was just a joke. This is something that we made up in class the other day, and we're certainly not starting with anything like this. So I'm just going to quit Unreal Engine completely. And hopefully now you can just see the welcome page. So this is an Unreal Engine 5 Study Hall, and we're calling it Blueprint Alchemy, okay? So in this episode, we're going to be talking about certain theory examples and also looking at how they can be implemented inside of Unreal. If you've never been involved with computer programming before, we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of a certain programming paradigm known as object-oriented programming. And the visual scripting language known as Blueprint is object-oriented. If you've ever heard of the programming language called C++, that's also an example of an object-oriented programming language. We'll look at some other examples of common visual scripting languages, although there are hundreds at least. And we are going to, maybe you'll surprise yourself, we're going to create some basic gameplay mechanics tonight using Blueprint visual scripting, even if you've never done so before. Before we begin, there are some basic concepts. I'm not going to try to teach you every aspect of object-oriented programming today, but we're going to see examples of some of what you see in this pyramid in our activities tonight. So when we think about objects, an object can sort of be anything, okay? And I wrote here that objects are the most fundamental conceptual unit in the OOP, object-oriented programming paradigm. An object can be virtually anything, just as in the real world. But an object is more specifically defined by its class. Objects can be of a particular class. And classes provide the ability to describe objects with greater specificity. All objects in object-oriented programming are generally of a certain class. So for example, you could have a class that is called food broadly. But there are different kinds of food. Now, food could be a class, an object class. But it can also have child classes or descendants from it, where everything is food, but maybe there's vegetables and there are fruits and there are meats, and then those could be child classes. They're all exactly the thing that was higher in the hierarchy, but the food being the case, but they are child classes. And even those can be broken down. Vegetables, we have different kinds of vegetables, and there's different kinds of fruits, and it goes on from there. In the lowest rung of the pyramid, I wrote some terms that I hope they don't seem intimidating at all. Functions and methods in object-oriented programming are practically the same concept, and that will do for now. Those are actions, really, that a given class can perform. A class can have components, properties, and variables, which I elaborate on in the next slide. And we're going to look at all this inside of Unreal Engine tonight, I promise. I'm going to skip this because I'm going to distribute this to all of you, and you can read this just as supplemental reading. It just expands on what I was talking about in the previous slide, just for the sake of time. But let's go over some important terminology that we'll be using: functions and methods, actions that a class can perform. Components, as they're implemented in Unreal Engine, tend to be pre-scripted pieces of functionality that can be added to or inherited by a given class. Now, inherited by, in the previous slide, we were talking about the fact that any given class, such as food, can have child classes, fruits and vegetables, etc. When we create child classes from a parent class, the child classes are going to inherit attributes and other features of whatever its parent's class contain, but they can be modified further. Properties, these can be thought of as the settings for the components in a given class, in the sense that we're going to see them in the blueprint visual scripting system. We'll also be talking about variables today, and one way to think about variables is to think of them as conceptual containers that hold different kinds of data, as well as values for those data, especially if these are things that need to be accessed or changed in your programming frequently. So a class can contain these things: functions, methods, components, properties, and variables. And in so doing, we get more and more specific about what makes a class distinct from other classes. So visual scripting has similar and often identical goals as conventional programming. Instead of representing programming concepts using syntax, which is the types out lines of codes that you see people entering into terminals frequently, visual scripting languages represent programming concepts using what most people refer to as nodes, which are not lines of code. They are modules that contain functionality. And they are usually displayed on a graph with logic connections between them that look like wires. Blueprint is a visual scripting language, but it's not the only one. And what you're looking at here on the left is an example of what a blueprint piece of programming might look like. On the other hand, we have on the right side a piece of C++ code. And Blueprint, just for your information, is related to C++ because most computer languages, especially in object-oriented programming, incorporate an idea known as abstraction, meaning that at the very foundation, we have to have a computer language that can talk directly to things like microprocessors. And those are rarely the first call programming languages, with a few notable exceptions. But that is a programming language that can talk right to your CPU on your computer or your machine or whatever you're working on. Even C++ is a level of abstraction higher than machine language. It's a language that does need to be compiled, and when you compile, it's basically converting that code that you've written into a version of itself that can talk directly to the microprocessor. So C++ is a relatively low level of abstraction, and Blueprint is based on C++. So it is like a level of abstraction a little bit higher. So it's a slightly higher level programming language. But it's usually more approachable for people who are just getting into writing computer programs for the first time. And whether you do it with visual scripting or C++ or something else, well, they both have their place. If we look here, you can see just a handful. I collected these earlier today. I don't know if you recognize these, but there are hundreds, maybe even more than hundreds, that might be an understatement, of other examples of visual scripting languages that are used not only in game development, but in science and in industry in various ways. So Blueprint is not unique in being a visual scripting language. It's just one of many, okay? And it's very, very approachable. It allows us to rapidly prototype things and get things working and make things happen in the game without really having to do much in the way of memorization of syntax and knowing what special characters go where, as you would have to do if you were writing syntax-based code. I think this is a really good entry point into learning about programming logic in general and getting a good understanding of object-oriented programming in general. So some additional terminology before we begin. We are going to be dealing with things called assets. And assets are files that are up for consideration to be used in a project. Assets can be things like 3D models that are brought in from typically other software, although Unreal Engine 5 has recently added modeling tools into their tool set. But normally 3D models are imported. Audio files that sound designers and audio engineers and music composers create, very often using external software, but those can be imported into Unreal Engine. If they're up for consideration for being used, they're assets. Animation files, particle systems are used for special visual effects. And assets don't even have to be visible, okay? Some provide just functionality and are not things that you can actually see as a player in the game. An asset becomes an actor once we have moved it out of a folder simply into the game world, where it is in the world. When we place assets in the world that we're speaking of is sometimes referred to as a level in a video game, or it can also be called a map, and you can use those terms interchangeably, generally speaking. But an asset becomes an actor the moment you put it into your game, whether it's just sitting there or doing something functional. If it's in your game world, if it's in your map, it's an actor even if you can't see it. And we'll see examples of actors that we don't see explicitly. Now, blueprint actors is a separate distinction. everything in the game world is an actor, and a blueprint actor is also an actor. But a blueprint actor is any actor that contains scripted functionality. If it provides information or interactivity or does things such as gameplay mechanics, or you can make it do things other than just sit there. Okay, that's the type of actor that requires a little bit of programming, and we're going to do that using the really robust blueprint visual scripting method, as you'll see. So is this my last slide? Let's see. I think that might be it, and I think I might be ready, therefore, to go back to my Epic Games launcher. And just so that this doesn't look so nasty, I'll scroll up to the good-looking slide, and that can be my backdrop. Hopefully, you can all see my Epic Games launcher. Would anybody care to confirm that for me?
You're good, Ben.
Oh, okay, thank you. So hopefully you have launched this and you've set up your account with Epic Games. If you don't see what I'm seeing, if you're in the store, just go down to Unreal Engine and make sure that you've signed in. Okay. And once you've done that, we are going to launch Unreal Engine 5.0.3. Hopefully you've read you know, the document that I typed up about getting ready for this. Usually when you install a new version of Unreal, the very first time you launch it, it takes longer than you'd expect. So hopefully you've launched the engine and then just closed it, and on subsequent launches it should take nearly as long. So hopefully I won't have to eat crow here. I'm going to click right there where it says Unreal Engine 5.0.3, and my editor is loading. And this will always take a little bit of time, but it's going to take typically longer the first time you ever try it. So we'll just wait for that to load. Once it gets going, it usually picks up steam pretty quickly. Okay, so this is the Unreal project browser, and I can go through this and I can look at other projects that I have in progress. In this case, though, we're going to start something new together, and I'd like you to join me and follow along if you are so able. Today we're going to create a basic game environment, and I would like to use a certain template for this. Unreal Engine provides a handful of templates just to get us started. If you use any template in the assortment provided for you, please understand that you're not necessarily locked into using only that template type. I can bring in features from any template into any other template. So for example, if I were to use this third-person template, but I wanted to add vehicle driving capabilities, I can import this entire feature pack into this template once I've created a game using that template. So really, it's not so important which template you start with, but I usually use the third-person template because it comes with a character model that is useful for judging scale. And you'll see how we use this. Before you click Create, you're going to want to name your project. You don't have to change any of these default settings, and I would suggest that you don't. Except for making sure that you're making this in Blueprint and not in C++. Okay, so we're going to make a Blueprint project today, and you're going to give it a name. So I'll call this Unreal Engine Detroit _01. Now, the reason that I named it so strangely, in fact, I used too many characters. Hopefully you can see that it only allows a certain number. So we'll go UED 01, and I'll just remember that. UED,
Hey, Ben.
Unreal Engine Detroit. Yes,
Hey,
Solly.
I think you stopped sharing your screen somehow.
Oh, did it go away?
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me go back to GoTo, and yeah, it did. Did it suddenly turn off?
It happened a minute ago, but it just took me a minute to wonder if it was me, and then somebody else started chiming in.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I hope you didn't miss too much. And we're still here setting up our project. And can you all see this and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I have the path set here, and I save my projects onto external hard drives typically. This G drive is just an external solid state drive that I have on which I've created a directory called Unreal Projects. So I tend to save my Unreal projects into that directory when I'm using that drive, and I've got similar directories on other drives. So once you've got it named using legal characters, they cannot have spaces, and there are certain characters that you cannot use. But name it something, and as long as you don't get a warning here that you've used an illegal character or a space, then your name should do. But you could use the same name that I chose if you wanted to. And now that I've got
Another best practice, I'll just chime in, is to try to keep your name relatively short, 20, 26 characters, something like that.
Yeah, because it'll stop you if it gets too long. So it has to be within a certain number of characters. That's correct. Thank you, Tali. But I think that's compact enough, and we don't have to change anything else here. Again, just make sure you're using Blueprint and the third-person template before you hit Create. And this is going to create our project. And that'll take it a moment. You'll see the editor kind of relaunch during this process. And there it goes. But it shouldn't take long. Let me know if for some reason my screen share disappears again, and I'll quickly rectify that.
I will, and kind of in a common politeness, maybe not everybody's machine may be as powerful as Ben's laptop, so his project is now open, but if you're still building or compiling shaders, feel free to, there's a reaction button in the app. You can raise your hand or
yeah, you may be getting messages in this lower portion of your screen. One of them might say project is out of date. Should you update it? I would say yes, click update. If it says anything about plugins, you can dismiss that notice. There shouldn't be any other messages other than those two. But make sure your project is updated. And if it's also got a little message that says something like preparing shaders or compiling shaders, and there's a big number there, that just is going to happen, and you're going to have to let that process complete itself. But in the meantime, I just want to give you a little bit of a tour here just to talk about some of the important things that you're seeing. This big window in the middle, that's known as the viewport, and I have a 3-button mouse with a center scroll wheel that can also function as a button. Learning how to navigate the viewport is super important. So if I hold down right-click on my mouse, I can pan my camera. Okay, I can move this in different directions. If I hold down my left mouse button, I'm still panning, but if I move my mouse forward and backward, I am translating my camera forward and backwards, a different movement mode. If I hold down both mouse buttons simultaneously, I can move up or down. That also works with, usually, it can work with, not in my case, I guess I don't have those keys bound correctly. There's a couple of other hotkeys that you can use, but I'm really used to using the both mouse buttons at the same time for up and down. Now, another great thing that you can do is if you play games, you know that the keys W, A, S, and D are often used for moving a character around in a game. If I hold down my right mouse button, I can WASD all around this level and just pretty much get at anything, okay? And now I'm using both mouse buttons to move up and move down. And now I'm holding the right mouse button and pressing WASD, and I can find actors that are in this scene. All of these are actors, everything that we see, and even some things that we don't see. If I wanted to zoom in on a particular actor, I can select it in this window called the World Outliner, okay? And I can do one of two things. I can double-click, and it will take me there. Okay, this one is a piece of geometry, and you can see that that's selected. If I select something else, I can hit the F button, and it will take me there. That's another piece of geometry. And speaking of geometry, a term that you're going to hear me use throughout today's lesson is the term static mesh. And I don't want that to seem too technical. A static mesh, right, for the time being, could be simply thought of as a 3D model. Okay, so these are static mesh files, and that's why they have the prefix SM underscore, and it tells you what it is. It's a static mesh. Okay, so we have got quite a few static meshes in this scene, and actually this game, this template is playable as a game. All you need to do is hit this play button, and it'll put you right into the game. Okay, so there I am, and this is a default character that comes with this template. This character's name is Quinn, and we can play as Quinn today, although you can play as any character. But switching out characters is not what we're going to be doing tonight. We'll be using this default Quinn character. You can see that some of these actors respond to physics, and we can look in different directions, and we can jump. That's about it. Okay, we can run and jump, and that's okay. So I want to start utilizing Blueprint as quickly as possible. So let's just give an example of something that could be an actor, but is not a Blueprint actor. We have at the bottom here this thing on my screen called the content browser. You may not see that, okay? So if yours looks like this, which it probably would for the very first time, let me just move my meeting controls out of the way. Shift spacebar. Top of my meeting controls, sorry. Shift spacebar can toggle that. Right now it's docked. Got to move these out of the way because I can't even see it. You can dock it in the layout. That is how it is in Unreal Engine 4. So if you are coming from Unreal Engine 4, you might be used to seeing it there. I have the feeling these meeting controls are preventing some of my shortcuts to work. So if you ever get into trouble, this is a good time to mention this, where you've closed windows that you didn't mean to close. You can always go back to the window menu, load layout, and use default editor layout. And that will restore things to how they should default. And yes, now my shortcut is working. I'm using, in this case, Control Spacebar to bring my content browser into view or not. And if you choose, you can click Dock in Layout, and that way it's always there. I spent so many years in Unreal Engine 4 where it was, most of the time, it was visible down there permanently. This does give us a little bit more screen real estate, but I'm just, I get a little bit of comfort just by seeing it there. And inside this content drawer, moving my meeting controls again, excuse me, we see some folders, and these folders, the root directory here should be the content directory. And we see some folders, and there are some things inside these folders. Starter content is a good one to know about because there are some assets in here that we can use. Some of them are static meshes. Some of them are audio files. Some of them are materials. And materials are an interesting thing to know about because materials are sort of like wrapping paper. I can place a material onto an object, for example, and it looks like it's made out of that substance. Okay, so just wanted you to see that. So there are things that we can use that come with this template, and if I want to add other assets into here, we can do that in a number of ways. One of the best ways is to use the Unreal Engine Marketplace, which is in your Epic launcher. Just click the Marketplace tab. The first Tuesday of every month is a special day for Unreal users because Epic Games makes certain asset packs free for the entire month. I do recommend checking on the first day, the first Tuesday of every month. And also, certain assets tend to trickle in, throughout the month, and I check regularly. There are also free things that are permanently free on the marketplace and very premium assets that you can purchase. And today, we're not going to need to purchase anything. We're going to work with what this comes with for the most part. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I think to start with, is just build a basic blueprint using some starter content. Let's open up starter content, and I'm going to look inside. Okay, so content, starter content, and we're going to look inside the props subdirectory. So these currently are assets. They're static meshes. You can see the prefix SM underscore before each one. So let's just take this static mesh door and drag it into our world. And it's waiting for this mesh to be ready. And it's probably compiling shaders that I can't see, or preparing shaders. But that'll pop into place in just a moment, as soon as it's compiled as shaders. Okay, there it is. So hopefully you can all see that. And this is now an actor. It's not a blueprint actor yet, but it's in my world. And I can use various tools to control this. To begin with, if I have the door selected, and if this is awkward, it's only because I've got meeting controls that I keep on having to move out of my own way. All right, so what I want is to be able to select this door mesh. And for some reason, it's not allowing me to do that. Let's try that with this tool. Nope. I'll search for it. Door. Static mesh door. Okay, so there it is in the level, and if I go play the level, that's odd. Oops, I'm in wireframe mode, excuse me. I see. I'm spawning just behind it. So this is called the translation tool, by the way, and your main editing tools are going to be up here. We've got selecting of objects. Translation is what I just did by moving an object to a different location. We can rotate objects on all three axes, and we can also scale objects on all three axes. But if I go into play, and you know what, I don't see the door. Tali, I'm a little bit concerned that something about these meeting controls is not letting me select things and not letting me see them, even though they're in the level. So yeah, I'm not able to click on that. I am able to select it here, so I don't know what it is about the meeting controls that's not allowing me to.
You should be able to minimize those or put those off your screen and not block you in any way. But it looks like you have your gizmo selected now. Your transform gizmo for the door is selected.
Yeah, but if I click another actor and I try to click the door, I can't. I can only select it from the world outliner. So let me try that again. See how it's not letting me select the door?
Yeah, hey, I've never seen that. Hey, Jared. So Ben, right now, he selects his door, and then when he goes and selects something else, he can no longer connect, even select the gizmo or trigger the gizmo.
Yeah, let me just put another one in there and see if it was a glitch. So I'll play. Okay, we're good. Okay, so that must have been just an error of some kind. But here is a static mesh of the door. And we're going to do something with this door. We're going to build a house, and this is going to be our entranceway. The only problem, though, is that this door is a static mesh, but I can walk right through it, and in real life, I can't walk through solid objects, at least not as far as you know. So what this lacks is a feature called collision. And I want to, some of the meshes that we have here do come with collision, and others don't. For example, if I take this rock, hopefully you can see the rock, I happen to know that that also doesn't have collision, and I can walk right through the rock. Okay. Is everybody seeing that all right?
True.
Okay, good. And I can add collision to both of these meshes using what's called the mesh editor. In this case, I'm more interested in the door, and I'm less interested in the rock. So let's delete the rock just by highlighting it, either in the world outliner or just by selecting it in the map and hitting the delete key. So here is this door static mesh, and I want to add collision to it. So we're going to edit this mesh. So we're going to go back to starter content, props, find that mesh, and double-click. And here, what I want to do is a couple of things. We're going to open up this collision menu, and we're going to add a box simplified collision. And actually, that's probably all we need to do. So let me just save. Now, by the way, you may have noticed that prior to saving this asset with the collision applied, there was a little asterisk that appeared right there. And we have to get into the habit when we notice asterisks that assets do need to be saved if we have modified something about them. In this case, I added collision, so there was an asterisk, and that's why I had to save that. So now let's see if I can still walk through the door. No, that blocks me, and that's what I want. I want that to be treated as a solid object from either side. Great. Okay. So now I know that that asset is not going to be something that I can walk straight through. And I don't even have to leave it in the level. I can delete it because now I know that if I ever bring that asset back into my world, it'll retain that collision that I placed around it. And there are different types of collision profiles depending on how complex the geometry of your, your item happens to be, but that's just fine. Now in starter content, let's do this. Let's go to architecture. And we've got these are static meshes as well. And let's just take this one that's called wall. And we'll take the wall, and of course it's got a translation tool, okay, to place this any place in XYZ world, our coordinates of our map here. This is going to be our floor. So I'm going to change my edit mode to select and rotate. And that's going to go down 90 degrees, and that's going to be our floor. I think I might want to delete this ramp over here because I think I need the real estate to build the dwelling that I intend to build. Okay, so let's just translate that further back. And we can reuse these meshes. Here's a cool trick. While I have a mesh selected in my world, if I hold down either Option-Shift or Alt-Shift, and I drag the translation tool, I can make a copy of it. And therefore, I'm going to have another segment here that I can line up with the first. Okay, try to get them snapped just together. And we can do that again. I'm holding down Option-Shift, making just a bigger floor, I guess. And I can maneuver my camera in order to see that more clearly. Meet those up. I make sure that I'm not overlapping, but just snapped right to that same edge. And we'll do it again for this Option-Shift. I'm going to build a house kind of as quickly as I can, maybe not as carefully as I can because I don't want to spend all of our time doing this. But this one, all of these, in fact, can be selected via shift-clicking them. And then if I Option-Shift or Alt-Shift up, now I can have something that can function as a ceiling. Okay? And this is probably too high, so we are going to make our walls next. So we'll take one of these perhaps, and I'll make a copy of it. This one I'm going to translate upwards a little bit and rotate it 90 degrees on this axis. And we're going to look at this from different angles just to make sure that it lines up the way that we want with our floor. Let me see. And if your camera is moving too fast, you can open up this drop down here where it says camera speed. And when you're doing detail work on a small scale, you might want to slow that down so that when you're using the WA, S, and D controls, you're not flying around the viewport as quickly. Now, that's a little slow for me, so I think I'm going to speed that up to a 3. And each of these can also be scaled if you want to fine-tune them. So it looks like we're going to need 2 of these, so I can Option-Shift from there, get another one, snap that into position.
Hey, Ben.
Yes?
I'm not seeing any motion on your screen.
Not seeing any motion on my screen.
Your video camera's live, but your Unreal Engine looks like it's...
Yeah, this is what we were talking about before.
Still looks good to me.
All right, cool, Nathan. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, it's real smooth here. I'm getting like silky frame rates.
Good.
But all right, so I can take these two walls and reuse them. So let's select them both by shift clicking, and then Option Shift will drag these over here. Oops, I dropped them in the wrong location. No biggie. Okay, and I can do this again. Option Shift, bring it out this way, and get myself back in where I can see it. So let's undo that last move. Option Shift, and my cursor no longer works. So let's try that again. Okay. Shift click, Option drag. And these, what I'll do is I'll rotate them 90 degrees. And notice that this goes in snapping intervals. And you can set the snapping intervals for translation and rotation and scale just by setting different values here. And you can also disable the snapping features if you want the ultimate granularity in positioning objects. I don't think I rotated that enough, so let's get that where it is most needed. And I'm just using WASD and my mouse to change perspective on what I'm viewing here, because I want it to kind of line up with the other geometry. And now my ceiling, and I don't have a front wall yet, and that's deliberate, so we'll take our ceiling. And remember, that was 4 static meshes together. And there are ways to group them, but this is good enough for now. We're going to just lower this, and that's going to be our roof. Let's just make sure that we're lined up reasonably well. I think I might be off center with this mesh in the back, or maybe the roof is a little off center. Let's see. Or maybe the roof is not exactly the same dimension, which is okay with me. Okay, I'm not going to worry too much about that. This is just an empty room. And on the front, let's do this. Let's have a wall that has a door. And we'll rotate that 90 degrees. Make sure. Okay, and translate that back. What I'll probably do in this case, see how the snapping interval is not allowing me to line that up exactly. So what we'll do is we'll take the snapping grid value, and I'm going to turn that down so I can get that lined up just the way I want. Okay, and hopefully that'll blend in better. And I want to take that all the way to the edge right here. And we'll cover up that other geometry some other way. Let's use another wall, which we can place here and rotate. Trust me, the blueprint part is coming up very soon. Okay, so this can go over here. Not going to be terribly careful. And we need something to block that geometry over here. So what we can do is just a little bit, something with different proportions, maybe put it above the door, and I'll rotate that 90 degrees, and we'll just hide, we'll hide that area up above. And now you see that doesn't quite fit, but we can also go into scaling mode, make that wider, should we need it to be wider. Let me look at this from the inside. Notice that it's dark because we have no lights in here, but I can see when it's right up against what I want it to cover. And I think that it just isn't wide enough, so we can go into scaling mode, and I can make this wider using the scaling tool, the gizmo, or I can scale it on X, Y, or Z. And the X-axis is the forward axis, And by the way, as you pan around, you can see in this lower left-hand portion, hopefully, your axis pointers. But I'm just going to scale it using the tool, and frankly, it's not that important to me how big it is as long as it's not visible from the outside. I also don't want to be covering up the top of my door. Okay, so maybe something like this. I don't want any air gaps. Light can shine through. Okay. So this is kind of a rough starting point. I don't think I'm in there far enough. Rough starting point for our building. Okay, looks like there's a little step up there, but that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so let's now make our first blueprint. I'm going to click Save All, and I recommend that you do that periodically. And I want to navigate back to my content root directory now. And we're going to create our first blueprint. And to do so, let's start by making a folder where it's going to be housed. And we right-click in the blank area of the content drawer. And remember, it's Command or Control Spacebar sometimes. Mine works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. But let's see. Let's close that. Yeah. So that's Control Spacebar on my computer. But again, I like it docked. Okay. And what happened? Dock in layout. Yeah, it's not okay. So I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to go load layout, default editor layout, and we should be back to normal again. And if you get this, just dismiss it. Okay, we don't need this door open anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and get my content drawer. The surefire way is you just click that button. Okay, dock and layout, and we're going to be just fine. So we'll make a folder by right-clicking in here, new folder, and I'm going to call this door blueprint or blueprint. And double-click to get inside that folder. Now I'm going to make my first blueprint actor. We'll right-click, and we're going to create a new blueprint class. Now there are different classes available, many in fact, but the most generic class is actor. Anything that is below actor class has more specialized characteristics, but they all descend from actor. And what we need for our door is only for it to be an actor. It doesn't need the special things that come with these more specialized classes. So let's make an actor, and it's going to ask us for a name first. So I'll call this, oops, I accidentally clicked off it, but that's okay. I can hit F2, with that highlighted, F2, and rename it BP underscore door. Okay, so that is that object. And right now it's a class unto itself, so to speak. So the way that I got to this window is just by double-clicking on that icon, and this can be docked. Okay. If you don't see anything that looks like a graph here, then just click Open Full Blueprint Editor, and you should see something like this. Looks like a graph. For now, notice that there are 3 tabs up on top, and one of them says Viewport. So I'm going to click on the Viewport tab, and I'm going to add some components to this. And one of the components I want to add is that static mesh that is our door. Now I can, when I click Add in the Components tab, I can search for static mesh if I wish, and it will filter the results for me, and I will be able to find it. Or if I open the Add button, static mesh is something very common to be added to a blueprint. So it's already there for you, and you don't have to search for it. So we'll add a static mesh, and we can rename that as well. I'll call that door mesh. This can have spaces, by the way, when you're just naming these components. But you don't have to. If you want to get into the habit of never leaving spaces, I think that's fine. Just if it's multiple words, capitalize each word. All this blueprint knows is that it has a component called a door mesh, but it hasn't been chosen. So what we'll do is we will go fetch that door that we want to use. Now that can be done either by searching for it. Here, there's a lot of meshes that are available to us in this level. I can also, in the search field, type door if I want to, and get it that way. Yet another way is to find that asset in your content browser. So that was in starter content under props, SM door. With that highlighted, I can go back to the blueprint and use this button that's called Use Selected Asset from Content Browser. And that's a really convenient way to just pop it in there. So here's our door mesh, and this is now appearing in the Viewport tab of our blueprint editor. Okay, so this needs to be saved, but before you save it, you're going to want to click Compile first. So this is something we tend to do frequently, compile and save as we're making progress in any given particular blueprint. So what I'd like to do now is to now add some functionality to this, and we're going to be using a way of triggering off some blueprint code using a concept known as collision. And collision refers to when two different actors collide either physically with each other or perhaps with something invisible. And in this case, it's going to be something invisible, because I'm going to provide an invisible to the player collision volume around this door so that it can detect when the player character has overlapped or collided with that collision box. So what I'll do is I'm going to add another component and type the word collision. And there are different shapes of collisions, but I think a box collision is appropriate for a door. Now this is going to have to be positioned and scaled around the door in such a way to give our character enough leeway to be able to occupy that volume. So I'm using the scaling tool now to make sure that, for instance, I don't want it too close to the front or the back of the door, because then the character can't get out of the way once it starts opening and closing. So I want to make sure that I give my character space all around it. Okay, and we've got our door mesh, and then we've got our box collision. Now we're going to use this box in order to set off some scripted functionality, and here we go. This is going to be blueprint visual scripting right now. We're going to now go to our event graph, and this is where most of the action happens. You can see there are some courtesy nodes that are ghosted in the event graph right now, and these are commonly used nodes, but what I would recommend is just to draw a marquee around them with your cursor, highlight them all, and just simply press delete. We're not going to use those for now. We are going to create something called an event, which is the thing that basically kicks off the code or the visual scripting that we're about to program. And we're going to do it using this box collision. Now, this does exist, right? But you can see with that highlighted, it is hidden in game, right? That's one of its properties, is that it's hidden in game. We can see it in the editor, or not. I can make it invisible. But this hidden in game means that we can see it while we're working with it, but once we go into play mode, that's not going to be visible to the player. So let's compile and save, and go back to that event graph where we were a moment ago. So here, with our box component highlighted, I'm going to do one of two things. I can either scroll all the way down and view the types of events that I can create, or I can right-click the box and add event and get that same list. I personally find this to be easier, so I don't have to scroll all the way down in the details panel. There are other details I might want to look at. So let's take this box and right-click, add event, and one that we're going to use for this to start it off is add on component begin overlap. Okay, And this is a blueprint node, and there are some things here. These are data pins, and this is an execution line, and we're going to be drawing wires in between certain pins and execution inputs and outputs as we build up our code. So what we want to do here is we are in one blueprint. This blueprint is that of the door. But I want this to be able to sense when the player character is overlapping that collision volume that we placed around the door in our viewport, okay? And that character is in and of itself a whole other blueprint, okay? And this is the blueprint for my character. So if I go into my character blueprint, it's got code already set up for you in its event graph if you're using the default character. So what we need to do is communicate, and this is a very common thing, we need to be able to communicate between two blueprints. One way of doing that, and there's more than one way of doing this, but this is usually the way that people learn first. It is through a process called casting, and casting is a way to get information that you'll need in one blueprint from another blueprint actor. So on component begin overlap, let's remember which blueprint we're in. We're in the blueprint door. So I will pull off of here, and I'm going to type a command, cast to, and I want to think about what other blueprint do I want to get that information from. And the blueprint for the character, you know what? This is Unreal Engine 5. I'd better check. It's BP third person character. So let's select that. Cast to BP underscore third person character, like that, okay? When you do a cast based on an overlap event, you will want to connect something to this object wildcard pin, and that is going to be this actor object reference that we get on the begin overlap, okay? So it's checking to see if, in fact, it is this third-person character that's overlapping, or if it's some other object, in which case we would not want the door to open. Let's suppose that there were like other characters or objects in the scene, like rolling balls or things of that nature, that could, in fact, overlap that collision volume, but we wouldn't want the door to open in that case. All right. So now from cast to BP third-person character, what we want to do is we want to, it's usually a good idea to take this as BP third-person character object reference and promote that to a variable. And that's done by right-clicking, choosing promote to variable, and then we'll get this, what's called a setter, okay? And the variable is here. It's called as BP third person character, okay? And that we want this here because we want to be able to reference that later should we need to. In fact, I'm even going to change the variable type, but before I do that, I'm going to need to compile and save. And this is going to be a character object reference, okay? And it's going to ask me if I want to change the variable type, and that's fine with me. So I'll acknowledge that. Anytime I need information, I can get or set from this object reference, okay? So that's there for me, should I need it. Okay, but we're still inside the door blueprint, so let's compile and save. And now I have access. I've got access to the third-person character. So we know that the third-person character is what it's listening for, and what we want to do next is to rotate the door over a certain period of time. So to do that, we're going to make use of another blueprint node called a timeline. And that is, you could just type timeline, and the filter will probably find it for you. But if you can't find it, even by disabling context sensitivity, which sometimes you'll have to do, the command is add timeline. Okay? And sooner, you're going to start using these so frequently that you're not going to really need to do a whole lot of memorization. This is not like memorizing lines of code and syntax. If you remember something about what the node is called, very often you can just type part of its name, and then the filter will remind you. I'm going to call this door transition time, just so that I know what this timeline is going to be for. Timeline nodes are interesting because we can get inside of them by double-clicking. And we can make tracks for different types of data. I'm going to make one track here, and it's going to be what's called a float track. And this float track is just a track that will play from left to right over a defined duration, which I can specify here where it says length. So let's say I want it to take 2 seconds for that door to open. I'm going to enter a value of 2. And now the total length of my timeline is 2 seconds. In this timeline, we're going to create keyframes. The first keyframe is going to be added here near the beginning. I'm placing my mouse cursor near the left edge, and I'll right-click and add a key. And you can see that little representation of the key, as well as a time and value entry field. So for time, I'm going to enter 0, because where I initially clicked was just close enough, but not exactly 0. And I want the end to be 0 also. Excuse me, the value, I beg your pardon, the value to be 0. And then near the end, it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up, but near the end we can right-click and add another key there. And this will be at time value 2. And in this case, I'm going to use this float value, and I'll elaborate on what I mean by float value in just a moment, to represent how many degrees I want the door to rotate. So I'll type, let's say, 115 degrees. And you'll think that your keyframe has disappeared, but in fact it hasn't. You just have to rescale the graph horizontally and vertically, and then you'll be able to see that transition that you created. This is a linear transition, but if you wanted it to be kind of like an ease in, ease out, what you can do is you can click one of your keyframes and shift-click the other one. And with them both highlighted, you can right-click and just click on Auto, and that will give you a nice automatic curve. And it is adjustable. You can create custom curves. So this will ease in and ease out, okay? And that's going to give me a range of float values. So let's compile and save. Now, what are float values? Float values are just numbers, okay? And they differ from another type of number, which is called an integer. An integer is always a whole number. The only difference between floats and integers is that floats can have decimal places, so you can have in-between values, whereas integers are discrete values. So we've just created this timeline that's going to output a series of floats going from 0 to 115 over the duration of 2 seconds in this sort of interpolated way, okay? Now, I don't want to close this blueprint, but I do want to close this tab because this is the inside of the timeline, and we don't need to be inside here anymore. If you accidentally make an extra track, as can sometimes happen, just highlight it, maybe in the title bar, and delete it. Or make sure it's highlighted and just press delete. Those used to change a different color in Unreal Engine 4. So we only want that one. Compile, save, and don't close the blueprint, close the door transition time. Okay. The next thing that we want is to do something with the door mesh. So I'm going to grab that door mesh component and drag it into my event graph here. And from the door mesh I want to pull off and set relative rotation. Set relative rotation for that mesh. Okay. Now I do have to connect the update to the, this is the execution output pin, and this is the execution input pin. And this wants to know a new rotation. on the X, Y, and Z? Well, I only want the door to rotate on, in this case, the Z axis, and that is the yaw axis in Unreal Engine, and I need access to that only. What we have here for rotation is something that's called a struct or structure, and that is made up of 3 float values in this case. I'm only worried about the Z, so I'm going to right-click over that struct and choose Split Struct Pin, so I now have access to these 3 floats. And the new rotation is going to be determined by the output of float values that is being put out by this door transition time. Okay, so if this is going to work, that means that when our character overlaps the collision volume that we placed around the door, that is going to make sure this cast is going to check to see if it is, in fact, the third-person character. And as the third-person character, we want to, we're just setting the variable here. That's where I got that reference in case we need it. This actually could be removed if we didn't need that variable, and we may not in this blueprint, but it's okay. Let's say play from start. I think I'd like that more than play, and then we'll update, and that should open the door for us. So let's compile and save and just test out this functionality by taking that and putting it into the world. So let's go to our door blueprint actor and just put it someplace near where the entranceway is going to be and go into play and see if this door in fact rotates in the way we want. Now, if I walk through or if I walk away, it's going to stay open, and I don't want that to stay open. I want it to close behind me. So let's add that functionality into the door. And instead of using onComponentBegin overlap with our collision box, we're going to use another similar event. And you might be able to guess what it could be. It's going to be event on end overlap. Okay? And from there, if I wanted to, I could just take this and reverse from end. Okay? And let's compile and save that, and only that, and see how that behaves inside the game. Again, I'll hit play, walk up, and the door opens. Walk away, the door closes behind us. Up, away. Okay. Now, if I wanted to add that to this building, this is the only part of the building that really should be a blueprint. So let's just do some cosmetic things in here. And let's get our starter content. There's a door jamb or like a door frame. Yeah, so let's put the door frame in there. And that's going to take a second because it is compiling shaders. So we'll give that time. Hope some of you are still awake. Okay, so I'm going to get that roughly to where I want it to be, into that space right there. Maybe move it around a little bit, making sure that it's fitting in the way that I want and going through to the other side. Okay. Notice that it's pretty dark in here once we enter because there aren't any windows or anything. One thing that we could do is we could place an actor there. We could place, where's my place actors panel? Window, place actors, right there, okay? Let's get, okay, so if that wasn't showing for you, just so you know what I did, I opened up window and I checked place actors. Let's just put a point light inside here for a moment and check its intensity. Let's see. So the intensity is set to 8 candelas. And this also has an illumination radius that's way bigger than it needs to be. Okay, so that's we don't want that. So let's go to its attenuation radius and reduce it so it's just basically in there. All right, so now if I enter that room, I should be able to see at least that light, okay? And let's play with it until it has enough coverage. So I reduce the radius too much, and we'll just get that in there. And where it's placed also makes a difference in terms of how the scene is lit. So let's say it's an imaginary lamp from above, okay? So now the door, this is an entire blueprint, and I can move the blueprint where it's supposed to be, the entire blueprint with all of its functionality. So let's make our little home here. And I know that I have to translate this up because otherwise it's going to overlap with the floor, and I don't want that. I want it to fit just right into this space. And I may even need to scale it because I'm not convinced that this door is exactly the same scale as the door frame. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Let's see, how does this look from the other side? Bring it in a little bit. And that looks pretty okay. There we go. That's better. I think that's more well-centered. So now let's hit Save All. Save Selected. And let's play the game. And by the way, one fun thing when you're playtesting your game is you can click these three buttons right here and choose Play in New Editor Window, or Pi as we call it. And when you open that, you can maximize it and play your game in full screen. And walk up to this door, and now we're inside of our room. And there are two blueprint actors that you're seeing right now. Everything is an actor, even the light that I placed up there. The icon is invisible, but the light is still there. And I can also get out of this space because that door was the blueprint that I placed inside that geometry. So while we're here, there's a couple other things I'd love to show you. One of the things would be, for example, maybe that light, when we turn it on, maybe the initial intensity of that light shouldn't be on. Maybe we should have to turn it on when we go into this room. So let's say that the intensity of the light is set to 0, okay? And that, therefore, it's completely dark. All right, so we'll save. And we want to turn on that light ourselves. Now, one way that we could do that would be to make the light into a blueprint actor and cast to it and try to control it that way. Yet another way to do this is through a different blueprint that applies to all the actors in the level, and it's called the level blueprint. So we can find that right here, where this little icon is the blueprint icon. So we're going to open the level blueprint. But before we do, I want to show you something. We're going to need a reference to that light. So the easiest way to get a reference to it is to simply make sure that it is selected in your world outliner or the asset in your content browser or what have you. Because when we go back to that level blueprint, we need to reference that first. And we know that it's selected in our world right now, so I can right-click in the level blueprint, create a reference to point light, okay? And what we are going to do now is we need to use some sort of input to turn the light on and off. And the level blueprint does, by default, accept input from the default player character, and that's player index 0. So that's who we're playing as right now. Now, I could set up proper inputs, but while we're prototyping here, let's just pick something from our keyboard. So if I right-click, I can search for keyboard, letter L, and let's see, keyboard events, and sometimes you just have to find it. Okay, so that's no different than pressing the L key on my keyboard. I can set up a proper input in project settings, but that's it's not necessary for today. L, it'll remind us that will toggle the lights. So off of pressed, we're going to use a type of flow control node called a flip-flop. And what that will do is for every time this event is called, it's just going to alternate the execution path between A and B and A and B. So using this point light here, what we're going to do is we are going to set its intensity, set intensity. Let me see, light, set intensity. Make sure I've got the right light, point light. Set intensity. Effects component, vector field, no. This is the light set intensity. Scale, no, I think it's just set intensity. And the new intensity, I guess, is going to be 8, because I think it was 8 candelas before. And that's going to be our flip. Now what I can do is I can copy all of these nodes, Control-C or Command-C, click down here and paste them again. And that can be what executes off of the B of the flip-flop so that I can turn the light's intensity back down to 0. Okay? So, yeah, this looks pretty good. And if I compile and save, if I get a checkbox here and no errors in the log, chances are at least there's nothing about this code that's going to destroy any functionality. Okay? So it's got that asterisk, so it needs to be saved. These can be docked if you wish. Let's go back to our playable map and go back into play mode. Notice that it remembered the play in editor was maximized. So let's go inside and find out that we're in the dark as the door closes behind us. But if I press L, hey, we've turned on the light. We could even attach something like a sound effect to that. I can turn it on and off as many times as I like with that flip-flop. Okay, let's do one more thing. 2 more things if we have the time. I'll get outside of this dark place. And let's do something else with that light in the level blueprint, which I think is still open right here. I'm going to use another keyboard event. Keyboard C, that's the letter C, and that is going to be for color. And I'm going to set another flip-flop. And what we're going to do is we are going to, using our point light, we're going to be setting we're going to be using this point light as our reference again. And where's my components? Somehow my windows keep on closing. Where are my components? Components. Content browser. Load loud. Blueprint. It's okay. I can just copy and paste it. Right, so I've got one reference to it right here. There's our point light. And what we want to do is set color. This is setting the color of the light. Set light color. And we're going to connect our A execution pin to set light color on this first one. So that's getting the point light and the light component. And for the new light color, I'm going to specify this by just using what's called the linear color. So I'll pull off and type linear color, which is a set of RGB values, and I can select them by name. So for instance, if I wanted blue light, I can set that to blue. Okay. And now let's copy all of this and paste that down here. And this is going to be a different linear color. Let's say this one will be linear color red. So, and of course the execution pin has to be connected. And what we should be able to do now is to use the letter L to turn the light on and off, and we should be able to use the letter C to set the mood lighting, so to speak. So there's our door blueprint opening. It's dark, so let's turn on the lights by hitting L. You could see her emissive badge glowing in the dark. emissive materials do contribute to global illumination by default in Unreal Engine 5. But now, if I press C, now I've got my own disco ballroom, and I could make as many different colors as I wanted to for that light, and I can even have different lights that change different colors at my pleasure, okay? So one last thing, I call this blueprint alchemy for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that when I make a blueprint, I kind of think of it as the way that an alchemist works. You know, you're putting ingredients together and getting them working in just the right balance to achieve a desired outcome. Now, in the case of an alchemist, that would be to turn lead into gold. So I think that we should try something like that. We should have a power to turn something from a mundane material into gold. And do we have time to demonstrate that, do you think, Tali?
Yeah, you have plenty of time, and I'm glad you asked me a question. Vince asked us a question about controlling the time it takes to turn on the light. And I was going to, in the chat pod, I was going to talk about some curves or some other methods to do that.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that can be maybe after we conclude the main part, because we could go down a rabbit hole of a lot of things about lights. Okay, so for now, maybe save that question until we conclude the main part of the workshop, if you don't mind, Vince.
All right,
okay?
Let him have it then. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We can even do this, by the way, from outside the building. I don't know if you noticed this, but we can turn on the light and we can change its color, whether we're in there or not. That could be controllable. I can turn off the light also because I'm not in there. All right, so let's have a mundane object. Okay, so let's take something from starter content. It really doesn't matter so much what it is, just a static mesh of some kind. And let's say it is a prop. What do I want? Props. What should we turn to gold here? How about this sphere? Right now it does have a material on it. And that material is the default checkerboard material, but it does have to compile because this is the first time we've opened this project, and now I can drop it into my world. Okay, so there's a sphere in our world. Let's make sure that that is where we want it. Okay, great. So with this highlighted, okay, I can simply go back, for example, to my level blueprint, get a reference to that sphere, or I can even cast to it. I can do it a number of ways. There's more than one way to get this done, but I could cast to it from my third-person character. Let's do it the hard way. Let's go to the third-person character, which is in this folder, third-person, content directory, third-person, blueprint, okay? And this would have to be, you know what? I'm changing my mind because I would have to make this into a blueprint actor. So let's change my mind, and we'll go into our third-person map. And remember, we have that item selected. It's an actor, and I can reference this in our level blueprint. So let's get a reference to that. Do I have a material sphere? Third-person map. Oh, context sensitive wasn't on. Create a reference to material sphere, okay? And let's say what we want is, you know what, I am going to make a blueprint out of this. Let's take this material sphere and add some blueprint functionality to it. We're going to make a new empty blueprint class of type actor using this asset, and I'm going to call it sphere to gold. Sphere to gold, and I'll put that for now just in our root content directory. So, oh, I guess it didn't bring in that sphere, but that's okay. We can always add our static mesh, and that static mesh was material sphere. I can search for it. material sphere, okay? And in the event graph, we'll get rid of all the courtesy nodes. I'm going to create a special type of an event or function called a custom event. And we'll type the words custom event. And that's, again, done by right-clicking, add custom event, and I'm going to call this change to gold. Okay, that's what this is going to be called. So I'll take the static mesh, bring it into the event graph, and from here, we're going to just simply pull off and type set material. Okay. Now the material that I want to use is going to be, of course, gold. Now I can find that in my starter content in my materials folder, or I can just search for it right here, where it says what asset do I want to use, and I can search for gold, and there's only one of them in this level, so I might as well use that. Okay, so let's compile and save and go back to our level blueprint. Okay, so here's the material sphere, and remember the level blueprint does accept input, so let's use keyboard letter G. I don't think we've used letter G yet, have we? C, L, and G. Now, now that we've got our material sphere, okay, what we can do is we now have access to that function inside of it, that custom event called change to gold. Right there. I had to uncheck context sensitive. Sometimes you need it on, sometimes you need it off. But in order to find it, I had to uncheck context sensitive, because that only belongs to this actor, this function. Change to gold, okay? And let's see, that is going to be, okay, this has to get promoted to a variable. So promote to variable. And this is a, we're going to call this sphere reference. Another way to do this, this might work. Let's try this. We're going to change this to a, let me compile first, beg your pardon. Static mesh actor. Static mesh actor object reference. And I know it's a static mesh actor because if I look at it, actually I should just create an actor object reference. It's probably going to work just fine. And so we're going to press G, set the sphere reference, and actually this, I can promote this to a variable. That's where I should have done it. And that will get promoted to an actor object reference after I compile. We'll fix that in just a moment, okay, because it still doesn't have its reference. Could be that. But we're going to change this again to an actor object reference. So object type actor, object reference. Change variable type. Okay, great. And I can rename that again with F2 if I want. I can call it sphere, whatever I want to call it that makes sense to me. Drag that in there and get it. Okay, and now that can become the target, or it should be the target. No, the target, excuse me, is itself. Beg your pardon. Not itself, it's the mesh. Where is the reference to the mesh? Hold on a second. Sphere. Begging your pardon, get mesh. Maybe I'm doing more than I ought to be. Get mesh, get component. Let me see if I can find the mesh component. Let me see if I can get it from here. Get mesh. Yeah, right there. That's the static mesh component. It was at the very bottom of the list. Okay, this is let's see. That's a static mesh component, change to gold. That's what we want to change to gold. So let me get out of that and use this variable to call that function. Can I get it from here? Change gold. Probably not. Let's see if I can. Yep, I can get that function right off of there. Okay, so change to gold. And we should be able to just connect that up, but it's not letting me. It's wanting it to be either this. It's not taking any of these. Material sphere. Change to gold. Let me compile this and save it and find out what that last node is asking me for. Sphere to gold, object reference. Okay, I could have sworn that we did that. Rename sphere. Let me use the same name. To gold. File. And that is, let's go back to static mesh object reference. That's probably what it's looking for. No, it's not. How odd. Okay, so here is a Hail Mary solution for this. We're going to use event begin play, which is an event that fires as soon as you start the game. And I'm going to get actor of class. And I'm going to just get that class, and that was called the sphere to gold. That's that actor. We'll promote this to a variable, and we'll call that real reference. And I'm going to change the variable type again to an actor object reference. So let's search for actor. Sorry about that guffaw. The actor object reference. Change variable type. Okay, that's what we want. And change to gold. I should be able to do. Oh, that's very, very strange. So let me get rid of that. And sphere reference. That's not taking that. Change to gold is the function. Did I? Yeah, I hooked this up here. Change to gold on the static mesh. One thing that we might have to do, and this, I doubt it, but we might have to do something like set primitive Metafloat right here. And I will have to explain this node on another day. If I can't get this working today, of course, I'm going to come back and make it work. Or what I could also do is, instead of using change to gold, I can disable this, not try to do it from my blueprint, but I can type begin play, event begin play, and I can enable input on this. This is just sort of like a last-ditch effort to get done on time here. So we're going to enable input. And the player controller is going to be get player controller. So from there, we should be able to set that material directly. Compile and save. And static mesh. Let's give it some sort of ugly material in the first place, like gravel. Okay, make it look kind of ugly. And compile and save. And let's see if this works. If this doesn't work, then I apologize, and I'll have to troubleshoot why it isn't. But if I can probably interact with this, no, physics is not enabled for it. But if I hit G, that's not changing to gold. It's not taking the input. Okay, so why that's not working right now, I don't know. It's being referenced. Okay, I was about to delete the actor, but it's reminding me that it's in my level blueprint. So I'm going to delete the code relating to the changing of that to gold. Boy, that just is so strange that I almost want to try it again with a different actor. Let's try this one more time. One more. Okay, so let's take this and it's a static mesh actor, but it is not a blueprint. So you know what? I think the blueprint that we made just wasn't in the world, okay? We were trying to act upon this, and this is not the thing that we need. This is the thing that we need. Okay, so sometimes we realize that, you know, just as we're programming, okay? So with this referenced, this was the problem all along. We'll go back to our level blueprint and get rid of that, and we will get a reference to the sphere to gold actor. Okay. Now, from here, we should be able to set material on the static mesh. Oh yes, this is going to work. And unpressed, let's set that to gold. It's been a long day. Forgive me. Let's make this look pretty so that we don't have wires crossing over other wires. That's usually preferable. And straight wires are appealing to look at. And now let's find out if this is happening in our level. Let's play the game. And, oh, it changed to gold immediately. So, did I hit G? Sphere to gold. Third person, G, set material. Okay, so I want to do a flip-flop. Right here. Because I know that this should be the flop, not the flip. Okay, the flip should be all of this stuff, but an uglier material. Excuse me, set material to gold should be the flip. Yeah, the flop should be gravel. Okay, so let's set that back to gravel. Boom. Okay, so now we should be able to turn it back and forth. So we've got our actor in the scene, and G, I can turn it from a mundane material, and by hitting G, voila, it's been turned to gold. That could be accompanied by something like a sound effect or a visual effect, and it can be any type of prop. It could be some sort of statue or some medallion or coins or anything that a blueprint alchemist might want to do. So that functionality is working. I should probably have cleared out any other references in my level blueprint to this actor. I don't know if I did or not. Yes, I must have, because I was able to. Now I was able to delete that. It gave me the warning before. So let's save all. And hey, Tali, I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
Do I have enough time to show them how to make a has key Boolean and have them have to find a key to be able to get into the room, or are we just about out of time?
You have all the time in the world, my friend.
Okay. So if you're all still with me, let's have this door and this environment be such that we can't even enter unless we have found a key. Now, I could use something from starter content to function as a key, but in this case, I'll take the opportunity to show you how to get something off of the marketplace. And let's see, can I get that without minimizing somehow? Let's see. Okay, so I can close that. I don't even need that anymore. And where's my Epic Games launcher? It's probably in here. Launch it this way. And this project is called UED01. I'm going to try to remember that. I'm going to go into my library where I was before. Right now I've got a drive spinning up, so give it a moment. This drive is not my solid state drive that I've got these assets on. Okay, so I've got my project, and if I scroll down, I wish there was one button that would allow me to scroll down to what's called my vault. And my vault just contains all kinds of assets that I've purchased and collected over the years. So let me just type key and see what I've got. Now, I've got this pack, but it says, this pack says not compatible with Unreal Engine 5.0.3, so yeah, we're not going to be using that one. Oops, I clicked it by mistake, but those are some pretty nifty keys. So let's go back to the library. This one says it is compatible, so we're going to add to project, UED, I'm going to search for it, 01, there it is. I'll add that to the project. Shouldn't take terribly long once that kicks off. This is probably a pack of different key static meshes. So it's almost 3 gigabytes. You can monitor the progress here. I'm on a wired connection right now, so this should be going a lot faster. I don't know why it isn't. So anyway, if that is taking too long, I'm just going to make my own key out of just a prop of some kind. So let's go back to my game, maximize that. Can you still see the game, everyone? Everybody still seeing Unreal Engine on my screen and hearing my voice?
Got
Yes.
and head nods.
Okay, great. So let's just turn anything into a key. So let's take a prop and let's make this statue into a secret key that we have to find, and we're going to hide that someplace. Okay, and I'll delete it for now. I'm just thinking about what it might look like in the level. So we're going to make a new folder, for key blueprint. Open that up. And actually make the actor. So we're going to right click and choose blueprint class of type actor. And we're going to call this BP underscore key. And that's just going to be that mystical statue standing in for a key. Okay, so we'll open that up and we want to add a static mesh component. And that static mesh is going to be found here. If I type search for it, I can search for statue and find it that way. Okay, so that is now there. Next, let's make a collision box. And this is going to be what's known as a pickup. Okay, this is going to grant us a buff, so to speak. Not a sphere, excuse me, delete that. What we want is a collision box. Or box collision, excuse me. And just like before, we're going to scale this around the mesh and make sure that it's large enough. So let's padlock the scale and just make it bigger on every axis. Okay. That's probably way bigger than it needs to be, but now I know that if I walk into it, I'll definitely overlap that box. So we're going to use the overlap again, get rid of the courtesy nodes in the event graph, and take this box and use an onBegin overlap. Okay, on component begin overlap. From there, we can cast to BP underscore third person character. That's the name of the player character. And the other actor goes to the object pin in this cast. And what we'll do is, as third-person character, now we've got to create a variable, a Boolean variable in our character blueprint. So I'm going to dock that for now. And in our third-person blueprint, I'll open that up, and I'm going to make a new variable. And we do that right here where it says variables. You hit plus. And this one is going to be a Boolean variable, and I'll tell you the definition for that in a moment. But the name of it is going to be usually posed as a question. Has key? Question mark. And I'll compile and save. And you have to compile before you can set a default value. And this is set to false, because a Boolean is a type of variable that can only be one of two states. It can be true or it can be false. And I want it to default to being false. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to set that to true when we find the key. Okay, so we're going to go back to this key. It has cast to the third person character, and now I have access to the variables that are in that character. I can pull off here and I can set as key to true right there. Okay, just by doing that overlap. And after that, I could play some sort of visual effect or sound effect, but ultimately, once I pick it up, I want it to disappear after it has set the variable. So we'll type destroy actor. You know, those filters are almost like cheat sheets, because even if you only remember part of the name of the node, usually you can find it just by typing you know, some of the words that remind you of it. And before you know it, you'll be finding nodes quickly. So we will save that and go back and drag one of those into the world. Okay, and that is in Key Blueprint. Let's just put it someplace. Like right there. If I want to make this even cooler, here's something you can do. You can add a rotating movement component if you wish. And that can be indented. Let me see. No, that doesn't have to be indented to anything, I don't think, except the default scene root. Okay, and you can play with the rotation rates and everything, but what that component is going to do is just make that sort of spin. If we go into play, this was like a key or something floating in the air that I had to get, then it would be rotating like that. And that's a cool visual effect. Okay. So I can still do this, but can I get in? Okay, well, yes, I can still get in, and that's because I haven't changed the condition in the door blueprint. Okay, so here is that door blueprint, and before I can do any of this stuff, I want to do a check and make sure that the character has the key, because if the character does not have the key, this should not be allowed. This is done with what's called a branch. So I'll pull off before the door transition time, and I'll type branch. And the branch is a sort of a logic gate, okay? It will only allow the execution flow to occur if a certain variable, it satisfies the condition. And
Hey,
that
Ben?
variable, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
Jedediah has a question. He
Yes,
says, "How
please.
did you get on the component begin overlap node in red?" Sorry, he glitched and he had to disconnect and reconnect, and so he's trying to get back up to speed.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm colorblind. So is this red?
Yes.
Can you? Okay, thank you. That part I don't see, but what I did is I highlighted the box, I right-clicked, chose Add Event, and On Component Begin Overlap. It's not here now because I already did it, okay? But if I were to delete this, I could go back to my box, which is that box collision around the door, okay? And in my event graph, I would right-click, Add Event, Add On Component Begin Overlap, and that's the thing that sets off what's happening here, okay? And the next thing is a cast, so it needs that other actor to be hooked up. Did that answer your question, Jedediah?
Yes, thanks so much. It's very helpful.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now that I have access to the third-person character, I can set has key. I have to uncheck context sensitive. Set it to true. Okay, and that can be next in my execution flow, and therefore that can satisfy this condition. And I can also do the same for the door closing. So I can use the same logic by copying and pasting these two nodes and making it necessary for the character to have the key before this goes back to the reverse of the timeline. So compile and save, and if we've done everything correctly, I should be able to walk up to that door. Uh-oh, something didn't compile. BP door, let's find out why. Clear, BP door. Let me see. Set target is going to be set has key. The target is going to be this promoted to a variable as third person character. I think I already promoted that to a variable. So get and nope, has key. I'm going to have to convert this actually. I'm going to have to do this what I did before. We're going to go, and before I set this here, I have to promote this to a variable, set it. Let me just bring this up here, make sure that you can see it, okay? And I'm going to change the variable type. I can rename it character reference. So let's just type F2, and I'll type third person character so I can keep track of that. Compile, and then I'm going to change the variable type up here to character object reference. So we'll type character object reference. Let me see, I might have slipped with my mouse. Let me do that again. Character object reference. Okay. Compile and save, and now let's get this in here and get that variable. Let's see if this is taking it, and it's not taking the variable. Okay, so I must have screwed up a reference somewhere. So we'll do one more thing, I guess, just another Hail Mary. Begin play. Get actor of class. Third person, BP third person character. Okay, so we've got that actor class. I'm going to promote it to a variable right here and set it. And we'll rename the variable F2, our character. And then we are going to compile first, but then we're going to change the variable type. And if this doesn't work, I'm puzzled. But we're going to type character. Well, actually, let me just check one thing. We want this target to be, it's a character object reference. Yes, so let's make sure that that's exactly what we make this into. A character object reference. Character object. That's what I want to see. Change variable type. Now this variable, if this doesn't work, I will be astonished. Okay, right here. And that's going to be get our character. That should be the... No. Okay, so this setter is the problem because it's not getting it from our character. It's just not seeing that event. So let's get it off of there. So we're going to get or set our character. Hold on, no, not there. We're going to make that the target. This can't be done here either because I have to make this setter come off of this proper reference. So set has key setter, and this is the door, so set has key. Okay, he should still not have the key. All right, so this variable exists. I don't know why that happened. Did my screen disappear? Did my sound
For a
disappear?
second, now it's back.
Okay, thank you, Vince. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. Get actor of class, set our character. Now, I should be doing this actually in the key blueprint, not here. Okay, so I should get has key, our character. Get as key, not setting it. And that's going to be the condition for that. That probably doesn't even need to be connected. Okay. Okay, so let's see. We are creating the variable here. We don't have to create that variable there. And we have a branch here which has the same condition. So we'll copy these two nodes, paste them here. Okay, has key should still be set to false. Okay, and let me just see, because that's the default. That's the default for that third-person character object reference. Yeah, but I made a third-person character object reference, and it's not taking that as the target. Man, oh man, I really wanted to show you this. Well, you know, I think that I'm over time, and I really wanted you to see this, but for some reason I'm just not getting the proper reference, and I don't know
Sounds
why.
like a segue for episode 2.
Yeah, I think maybe this would be a good stopping point, but I'll have to diagnose this error because I thought I got the right reference. I did it in every way that I could think of, and nevertheless, as third-person character, let me just get rid of this one more time because here I am. Okay, this is the cast. Get as key. There's the function. Okay, so I should be able to plug that right in. Okay, so same thing right here. Okay, so I could probably even reuse this. Okay, this will compile. Okay, I'm not stopping yet. I'm not done. This is going to happen. Okay, so now when we get the key, that is our pickup that will grant us access. That's going to be setting has key to true. Compile and save. So now I should not be able to open that door. Right? But I go and get this pickup. Ding. Okay, I've now been imbued with the power. Gain access to this room, and if I want, I can turn on the lights, and if I press C, I can have a disco. Okay, so sorry about all the guffaws, but in the end, this is just, you know, what it's like sort of to work in Blueprint. Excuse me, I pressed the wrong button. This is called wireframe view mode. That's F1. I just pressed F3 to get out of that. And yeah, so you saw some basic applications for blueprints to make things move, to change materials, to grant an ability. And blueprints can do all sorts of great things. If only we had all the time in the world, I would show you more. But I guess it's time's up, and I want to thank everybody very much for joining me. Let me stop my screen share so that I can see your shining faces one more time. And okay, so did you find that useful? I hope you did, and learned a few things that you can start to expand upon. And you know, not to make excuses, this is the end of my day and it's past my bedtime, so I start getting a little cross-eyed. So forgive me for that, and next time we'll make sure it's a lot tighter. In the meantime,
go ahead.
In the meantime, I just want to say thank you one more time, and I appreciate all of you staying this late. And if anybody wants to stay after for a few minutes and ask some questions, we could do that a little bit. But for now, this is the end of the official part of the video. So thank you again.
Thank you, Vince. Excuse me, Ben. I got Vince on the mind. But yeah, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Professor Blau, and thank you for being a great example. Sometimes in development, even when you're underfed and it's glutton coast of bedtime, persistence and and seeing the problem through is really what separates the wheat from the chaff. And I'm trying to think of an inspirational quote. Einstein once said, "I'm not smarter than anybody else. I just stay with the problems longer."
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and I hear this back from most programmers that I know,
yeah,
even C++ programmers that, they try it and it doesn't
especially.
work, and they've got to do some detective work and figure out what happened, what's stopping it from working, and eventually you find it, and you pick up speed the more you do it. Sometimes things start to fade. Like, I can't really remember the last time I tried to reproduce exactly what I demonstrated tonight, but I thought this would be a good way of showing you things like how to set a variable with a pickup, how to get a door to open, how to turn on a light. All of those were things that you can do in Blueprint, but they can be much more extravagant types of events that you can create. With sound and dynamism and visual effects and so forth. And it's not that different. It's not that different. So I hope you can visualize yourself doing this yourselves.
So Vince got his hand up.
Oh, yes, sir.
Oh yeah. I thought this was a great lesson. What does it for me is watching you troubleshoot the problems, and I think that helped me become a better programmer and writing better scripts. Just knowing like, oh, okay, if I don't get it here, might get it there. And I like the way that you use the flip flop. Flip flop was like one of my secret weapons in UE4. But to use the flip flop the way you use with the lights, that was like genius. Like, oh, I can use that to change my player's outfit when I do a move
Sure,
or
you're right.
something like that.
You
I'm like,
can, and there's
oh.
other nodes also, not just a flip flop. There's other like, have you ever heard of a for loop?
Yeah, I seen it in there, but I don't know how to execute a for loop properly.
Yeah, you
And
could have, like, let's say, an array of different materials or light colors or
that
whatever,
makes
and
sense.
you could have a for loop with as many indices as you need, and then every time you execute it, it's the next one in the array. You
Got
know,
you.
uh, it's also good for spawning things. Like if I wanted to spawn 4 zombies, I might make a for loop, like an actor spawner, but a for loop with like however many indices in it as the number of zombies I want to spawn. You know,
Right.
or how many, if I fire a weapon, how many projectiles do I want to come out of it? That sort of thing. So yeah, flow control. I think that tonight I just been up since about 5 this morning. I worked a full day. I got home and didn't eat and came downstairs and started trying to work on this demonstration tonight, which was only supposed to have been an hour, and now I'm terrified that it isn't. But hopefully, maybe we can edit it down and get it
Welcome to
into
the
good
world
shape.
of development.
Yeah. So, by the way, my name, if you didn't remember, is Ben Blau, and you can see, I think you can see, I don't know how to access the chat, but it's, Tali, are you able to put my email address on the screen somehow? Oh, wait, I
Sure,
think I
sure,
found the
sure.
chat. I got it. It's bblau at ltu.edu. And I work at Lawrence Technological University, and there is where I teach audio engineering and a couple of Unreal Engine courses, primarily on the subject of game audio. But in the process, our students are learning how to be generally literate with Unreal Engine in the first place, because if an audio student doesn't have basic literacy in the engine, then they won't be able to practice their skills. They've got to be able to mock up gameplay mechanics that require things like sound design. And so you wouldn't believe some of the things that Vincent has. Vince did it. I love that. I love that you call it that too, because Vince makes everything from scratch. The music, the sound effects, and his levels are crazy and action packed. So I hope you spend some time showing your work off to our community.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
just sent you something right before the meeting started. I emailed you something.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing so.
yeah. If you want to, I think moving forward, we want to do at least one educational segment a month, and I think it would be cool to do a community showcase, or even if somebody has a project that's broken or they're stuck, right? And then they just want to
Oh,
be like, hey,
Hey,
can I pick your guys' brain for 30 minutes or an hour and do a little
totally.
community
We're a
segment?
community. We're a
yeah.
And
community. Let's help each other and share knowledge.
you know. So stick around, join the Discord. We're always kind of kicking around and willing to help. And this was a good very first event. We've been doing the meetup group for I've been doing that since 2019, but this is the first official UnrealEngine.com Detroit community group meeting that ever happened. So you guys made your little mark in history with us today. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
But if anybody's got any questions, I mean, we can kick it around for a little bit, or everybody can start going about their business and let Professor get to bed. I think he's got a job to
Hey,
go to
okay,
in the
here's one
morning.
last thing for you. If you hold down Control L, you can change the lighting. As you move your mouse around, you can point your sun where you want it to be.
Oh, you're
Very
not
neat.
sharing.
Isn't that
Yeah, you're
neat?
not sharing your screen, but in
Oh,
Unreal Engine 5, yeah, Control L.
yeah, I was just doing it and nobody saw it, unfortunately. So one last little share. This is just a fun. You're probably all doing it if you still have your Unreal open. But this is great just because you can just hold down Control L and you can see that. Oops, hold on, something weird.
Yeah.
Some sort of about thing there in the middle of something. Okay, so Control L and my mouse is getting jumpy. Yeah, something has taken over my mouse and I don't know what.
You
I
know
just
what?
made it nighttime.
I think maybe next time we'll try a Zoom or the other program or whatnot.
Yeah,
And
a lot of this is just it's working now, but some unpredictability and the fact that it's been reliably choppy looking on your end. Uh, has anybody gotten like really great frame rates from my screen? Because on my screen everything is silky smooth in terms of
yeah, no,
frame
it
rate.
looks pretty. It's looked choppy for me all night. So
Yeah, and
um,
that's where it's being recorded. So, oh, I got an extra light in here. Okay, so I don't know how that happened. I don't have the key, so let me go get the key. Now I've got the key. Get in there. Click on. Okay. All right, I just wanted to fix that. Couldn't help myself. And then save all, save selected, and when you're done, you can safely just exit out of your Unreal project. Look, the keys, oh my goodness, I'm on wired internet, and the key pack, only 2.9 gigabyte, is still being added to my project. So I think that some of our woes tonight had to do with internet speeds, must be. But I can stop my screen share now. Stop sharing. Okay. Are there any other questions I can help to answer right now?
Oh, I do have one.
Okay,
All right, so
I can try.
earlier I asked about controlling the time, like you can turn the light on, off, like so it doesn't flash. It's like it'll like fade on and fade off or whatever. Because when you did that thing with the flip flop, I'm like, okay, what if I can trigger it with a collision box and have like a dark hallway, and each time I watch each segment, one light turns on and the one behind me turns off, but it fade on and fade off. It might fade, and the monster might be there.
Yeah, you a couple of things about that. Number one, yes, you can control the speed.
Cool.
However, if you're using Unreal Engine 5, it defaults to lumen as global illumination. So what will happen is that if you're using Lumen, which is the new global illumination system, basically in Unreal Engine 5, the light takes time to propagate and reflect off of every possible thing it can reflect off of. So you'll start to notice with Lumen that sometimes you look up and then suddenly things will gradually get brighter on their own, even if
Okay.
it should be an instantaneous change because it's propagating. Okay, but I already exited out of my Unreal thing, but I'll set up a video just for you, or I'll put it up on the wherever Tali thinks might be a good place for it, and maybe on the Discord or something, or I'll put it on a link on Facebook. Not Facebook. What is it?
I think
Yeah,
we've got a
YouTube.
community. I just sent a link in the chat too. There's no videos there yet, but there's an official Unreal Engine Detroit YouTube channel where these tutorials will live over time and
Yeah.
additional conversations and live stream pop-ups or whatever. So no content there yet. Tonight, like I said, is our first event, so we'll post this to the Unreal Engine channel, to the YouTube, and if you join the Discord, you can always find the links and links to our special community content there as well.
Were there any other questions?
I guess
very yes.
I've got one. We kind of went off schedule this month from our normal schedule, but work and your school and everything is kind of taken precedence. I kind of want to continue to take community polls and the people that show up. You know, what are good times? Are, Thursdays 7 to 10 o'clock, or
Thursdays and
7 to
Fridays.
9 for the meat and potatoes, but no, we're going to go late, or, that works for
me,
you. I'm looking at Vince and Gerard and Jediah and John and Coesi
And anybody else.
everybody to, let us know your thoughts and feelings and what's good for you. We rather, schedule around a availability for the people that are benefiting from the programming that we're doing. So, always be vocal. Don't be bashful. Just let us know.
So far, it's worked for me. Thursday worked great. Like I literally just got out of electronics class at 7 and rushed home and was right here.
Okay. Everybody's saying the time was pretty good.
So, hey, Tali, because
Yes, sir.
this lasted much longer than we intended, do you want to do another one a week from today? Just like this?
It's
Tighter?
up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, what I need from you immediately then, like, your picture with the right scale and the description of what you're going to do. And if we're going to do it only a week away, I'd like to maybe post the next event with a solid date, description, and link and everything tomorrow to at least give a week's run up of, people
Yeah.
to join.
Okay, just for your information, tomorrow is my sister's wedding.
All right.
So
Well, Saturday
I'll get
or
home.
whenever,
Yeah. But
as
yes, I'll
soon
get that
as
to you
you can get it.
ASAP. And I think that this can be done in an hour because I did rehearse it and I did it in an hour. But then what happened is I just got mental fatigue and I made mistakes tonight.
Right.
So I think that it could be tighter. I really do.
But that's
get it
actually, I
closer.
think it's kind of good to show aspiring Unreal folks, right? Anybody in development knows about squash and bugs and sleepless nights and the trials and tribulations. But I think leading by example, right? You punch through it and you save the day at the end. It took an hour longer, but bravo,
Yeah.
So
Thank you all. Thank you. So I very much appreciate all of your time, and I'll set this up again for next week. I may not pick the same exact examples, but we'll do other cool things. I'll make things blow up. I'll let you teleport. I don't know. We'll figure out all kinds of fun things to do.
Yeah, also community feature requests. Like, I want to do this in my game, right? And then game us and ask us to teach you how to do it, right?
Yeah. But I hope that if you've never delved into Blueprint before, or even if you have, that I know Vince has, and I know Tali has, if you picked up anything that is new, and if you have never worked with Blueprint, you can see that it's kind of like plumbing. Really, it's more like plumbing than sitting at a terminal memorizing lines of syntax, in my opinion. And it's based on C++. So once you learn about programming concepts in Blueprint, if you then go on to approach another object-oriented programming language, you'll have a better grasp, I think, of programming logic in general.
I could attest to that.
Yeah, I think it's
Me
a good
too.
entry port. Okay.
Well, awesome. Good night, everybody.
Thanks again.